Almost every one of them we're doing a second time.
Okay, well, let's call this public hearing to order. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Okay, Tim, is there a second? Doak, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Review the 2021 planning process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for new members, members of the public or otherwise, I just kind of wanted to give a short summary as to how we go about putting together the 2021 budget for the county, and then I'll go more specifically as to how we're planning on going forward with the planning of the 2021 Human Services budget. So for the county budget, the finance department and finance director sends out instructions and budget worksheets at the end of July. Um, that's usually, he already has filled in the labor and the benefits and the like. But then the other parts that are put in that we ask the departments to put in has to do with regular expenses, travel expenses, program expenses, if there's any outlay or equipment that people are going to buy. And then those department budgets are asked to be submitted this year by tomorrow, August 21st. I can, and we've already received over a dozen. Usually there's a few stragglers, and historically Human Services is the last budget to come in, and that's expected. Why? Because out of all the other departments, this is the most complex of department budgets. So then what happens is I receive those, I review them with the finance director. If we have specific questions of department budgets, we ask the department head to come in and we have a discussion. And then eventually then at the September County Board meeting, I present what is the administrator's proposed budget. From that time on, once the proposed budget has been submitted, there are committees that can therefore request changes to the administrator's budget. Usually those requests are made to the executive committee if it's dealing with staffing, and to the finance committee if it's dealing with money or finance. In October, we have a public hearing on the county budget. And usually also at that time, I go through the entire budget with the county board. I won't say line by line, but department by department, to allow any county board supervisor to ask any questions that they may have. And so that way I can answer any questions that they may have and address any concerns that they may have. And then finally, usually about the first week of November, the county board then approves the mill rate or the tax rate and the tax levy. Those are then given to the county clerk, who then forwards those on to the Department of Revenue. So that's just kind of a general overview as to the county budget planning process. As for Human Services, I'm doing something a little bit different than what was done in the past. I've asked each unit manager that has a program to work with with Brian, who's the financial manager for Human Services, and we're trying to kind of build each of those unit budgets from the ground up. And I'll give kind of a general idea. Is what I'm asking unit managers and Brian to work on is, if we have a client, we know that we are usually providing a certain amount of services, which therefore that is an expense, a number, a cost that is generated for that client. In that same respect, depending on the client, that client will then also generate revenue, because we are able to provide a service of which then we can get a reimbursement, so that client then generates revenue. Typically, and historically, is a client will actually generate more costs and expenditures than they do revenues. That's not a surprise for anyone that's been in this business. But what that helps to do is by doing that, we have a general idea as to a range as to how much a client will cost over a period of a year. And the reason why we do that is it helps us to then plan for budgeting. If we're assuming that a caseload, and I'm just going to, because I saw Sue, it's not because of Sue, if we have roughly 50 clients within CCS, and we know that over the course of the year, if we're providing them service and we were to take the expenditures and the revenues, and we know that on an average that client is costing us $5,000, and cost isn't the right word, but I hope you understand what I'm saying, is that, so if you take that $5,000 and multiply that times 50 clients, then that's $250,000. And again, is it a perfect number? No, it's not a perfect number. This will be the first year we're doing this. As in subsequent years, we'll get better at those projections and at those numbers, and therefore we'll be able to get a good idea as to if we're serving X amount of clients in these different programs, here's what we believe the budget will be. And if we need to make adjustments, then we can do so. In that same respect, what that helps us to do is if the county administrator and the county board are saying that we are only providing X amount of tax levy, that helps to provide those units an ability to know how many clients they can serve. Would we like to be able to serve every single client that we could? Absolutely. But from a financial standpoint, that's not realistic. But as we start to go through this process, we want to make sure that we're able to identify the revenues and expenditures, because during the course of the year, then if we've had what I'll call a good year where we have a census in one program that's lower than another, then maybe some of those funds could be redirected to allow for more clients to be taken care of. So this is something new that we're trying to do. We'll see how that progresses, and if you have any questions regarding that, once we get closer to the budget being done, then I will give that to the committee and we can discuss that as well. Currently, I will not be putting out the budget until closer for the Human Services Department. I won't be putting that out until closer to September, and part of the reason why is because Ms. Anoy of the Children's, the waiver and birth to 3 and APS unit, she's on vacation, and before I would want to make any type of adjustments if they're needed, I want to be able to discuss that with her before that's put to bed. Any questions regarding the process? That's all I have then for the county planning process, Madam Chair.
Okay, then I'd like a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Tim? Doak? Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are open in the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience here that would like to make any comments under public hearing?
Just as a stall, Madam Chair, I put a piece of paper in front of all of the members to make them aware. There was a public comment that was submitted in written form. Mr. Mattice is my predecessor. He is the former County Human Services Director. Prior to that, he was the unit manager for the Child Protective Services Unit. He has been with the county, for well over 30 years. He's a well-respected employee, and I have no issues with what he's saying and what he's advocating for. But if there's questions either regarding that, well, no, I'm sorry, it's not quite, this is public hearing, so we're just listening. If we want to discuss after the hearing, we can do that, but otherwise, I'll leave it open to any other members of the public that would like to speak. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in the open forum? Here, hearing none, I'd like a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Let's not close the public hearing because the agenda said that the public hearing would be open from 8 until 9, and since it was posted until 9 o'clock, we should, for open meetings purposes, we should leave it open. But my suggestion would be is that we could still open the Human Services Committee meeting and run both of those concurrently.
Okay. Okay, well then, with that thought, I would like a motion to,
No, you can just open the meeting, Madam Chair.
motion to approve the agenda of,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Well, you have to call the meeting to order, the
Okay,
Human
okay.
Services meeting.
Okay, we'll call the regular meeting to order, and the first thing would be to approve the agenda that was submitted. And Tim and Joanne as a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Approved. Next item is approval of the minutes everyone should have gotten in their packet. Is there?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Doak, and second, Joanne. Any discussion?
I have one minor
Okay.
correction. I was here last time, or at least I got paid for it, so,
Well, wouldn't that be perfect? You didn't even show and you got paid? No, I'm kidding.
Okay, we
other
will
than
make that
they're
correction.
fine.
Okay, are there any other changes to the minutes? If not, I would like a motion to approve the minutes with that one change.
I think we had it, right?
Yeah, but
Okay.
we have a change since
Oh,
then.
sorry.
Okay.
I make a
Okay,
motion to approve the
Doak, and
minutes.
then Nancy, you're okay with the change? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved. Okay, and any public comment to this committee? Any public comment? Okay. If not, then we're going to go on to the unit program manager reports.
All righty, thank you, Madam Chair. As I had stated before, Melissa Anoy is away. She is on some much-deserved time off. So you have her report in your packet, but we do have Ms. Norton and Ms. Conkle. So at your pleasure, whomever you'd like to have go first.
Okay. Sue, are you ready to come? Okay.
Can't be a YouTube sensation if it's not on, yes. So does anyone have any questions on the stats that were provided this month? And you might see some fluctuation, but there could be a number of factors in the number. I may have staff that's on vacation that aren't working. I could have people out sick, people at training. So if they're on vacation or at training or things like that, where they wouldn't be having contacts with the clients as much. So sometimes that can attest to the difference in numbers. The biggest change that we've had in our unit since last month is, I believe last month I reported we had 2 staff that were leaving. We have filled those positions with contracted staff. And last Monday I had 1 start, and last Wednesday I had the second. The second is only working part-time through the end of August, because she's filling her position as in her current job and through the end of the month. And then she'll start with us September 1 full-time. And those are both contracted through Helping Hands. As far as anything new going on, it's business as usual. We're plugging along, doing what we've been doing. Probably an increase in more face-to-face contacts, trying to do it as safely as possible. We've had the last couple of weeks, we've had a few individuals who family members tested positive for COVID. So we're trying to be as safe as we can. And it's, to be honest, it's a little scary for staff when you're at someone's house for 2 hours and then you find out, oh, well, someone tested positive. And so that's a bit nerve wracking, but we're working through it and doing the best that we can. And we still have several people who we work with who don't want to be seen face to face. So we've still are doing services via telephone and video conferencing through, we have a HIPAA compliant platform, Zoom for Healthcare, that we're doing some of the services through as well. Medicaid has been wonderful through this whole process with affording us the opportunity to do the telephone. That was something that typically wouldn't be covered through Medicaid. The video is, the Medicaid, or the telephone isn't. But what's nice is not everyone has the ability to have access to internet or the technology to be able to do video phone calls. The hope is that when their Medicaid is actually updating their telehealth policy, the hope is that they'll continue to allow for telephone sessions and services to take place, because if not, that could have an impact on those who maybe, we've had individuals in CBRFs or in the nursing home or assisted living who aren't able to leave or have people come there, and they're not able to do the videoing. So that's been a real nice option that's been very helpful for lots of people to continue with the services. So my question for you is, when I sit up here every month, what would you like to know? You have the numbers. Are there things that you would rather know or would like to know or would like me to report out on? Because most often, unless there's something real exciting happen, within the month, it's going to be, we're just plugging along doing business as usual. So I don't want to bore you and waste your time. So if you have any input or you'd like to think about it. Yes.
The charts and all the numbers, I like numbers, but it is a lot easier to see it if it could be graphed. I mean, you're putting all the data in, you could easily just, so we can just quick at a glance see if something's different. Otherwise,
Okay.
you're kind of looking back and saying, how
Sure.
are those numbers differing?
Sure.
To me, that would be a big help, because then we could pinpoint something that has changed dramatically and ask questions about
Yeah.
that.
So to answer, that off the top, because I'm familiar with it, there hasn't been anything that's changed dramatically since we started doing this, but I can work on that.
Let me quick jump in if I may. Does everyone know what each of the blue columns, what AODA, CSP, CCS, does everyone know what each of those acronyms or abbreviations stand for?
I think we actually got a chart
Okay,
on
I
that.
just
Yeah,
wanted
we
to be
have
sure.
go back and look at it.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
I
Then the
believe
only,
last month I
right.
put that in there.
The only other thing that I'd throw out there, Sue, is, as you said, kind of the numbers are the numbers. What might be, if you could just comment for the committee, is from what you're seeing for, I'll call it client caseload levels, since you've been doing your job now for a number of years, are these caseload numbers typical from year to year, or have you been seeing an increase in certain ones, a decrease in others, or are we usually seeing about 50 CCS clients each month, a year, those types of things?
I would say out of all of these programs, the largest growing program is probably the CCS program. Those numbers, I think, have consistently gone up, and if I'm projecting into next year, they'll continue to go up. As long as we have manpower to provide and the budget to provide for it, we certainly have the people needing the services. There's not a shortage for the need. It's just a matter of being able to accommodate the need. One of the challenges with that program is because it's more intensive, it's for people who need more than just your traditional outpatient services, like come to the office once a week. One of the challenges is being able to meet the demands of the need. So we have some pretty high needs individuals that are living in our community and in our county that require a lot of additional services to help keep them out of the psychiatric hospital and just to keep them maintained in their community. And having manpower to do that, we contract with external providers to assist with that. But even at that level, we have individuals still waiting to get some of those services. They may be on the program. So as internal staff, we try to fill in the gaps as best as we can. But if you have 10 people on or 15 people on your caseload and 5 of them are kids and 5 of them need after school services for 3 hours every day, it's hard for one person to provide all those services at the same time. It's impossible. We can't be in 5 different places at 5 different times. So we do the best that we can to fill in the gaps as much as we can until we can get contracted providers available.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Something you said early on in the meeting. You had mentioned when you go into people's homes, you had mentioned some of your caseworkers maybe had not known that there was a positive case or someone that may have been tested waiting for results. Do you call the home ahead of time and talk to someone before your caseworkers actually show up?
Yes, the incidents, and I apologize if I came around, the incidents is where they tested positive or they showed symptoms after the fact.
Okay.
So they were exposed,
Okay.
and then 2 days later you find out, oh, they had tested.
Do you ask that question?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes.
you're sort of pre-screening them
Yes.
before you're sending your caseworkers into their home?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank
I-
you. Thanks.
I'm not, and this is just my personal thing, I'm not telling people you have to go into their home. You know, I'm not dictating that, where I want them to be comfortable, and if they're not, I want them, you know, it's going to be hard if you're just focused on your safety and not focusing on what you need to focus on for your job. So I'm allowing them to make that decision with their client. And yes, if they go to the home, and we've had that happen where someone is not well, nope. And sometimes you don't know until you show up. You know, people aren't always the most forthcoming, and then you show up and it's a different story. But we're still trying to do outdoor visits. It's been beautiful weather, so we've been fortunate in that respect, or trying to meet someone at a park or do as much of that as we can just to maintain safety.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have questions for Sue? Not, thank you. Okay, Corinne?
All right, good morning, guys. I don't have monumental things really to share either. You can take a look at our numbers. It looks like we are down a little bit in our face-to-face contacts. You can look up at the referrals, however, so those have gone up a little bit, our new referrals. So I think what we'll start to see, I haven't kept monthly numbers like this ever, but I think what we'll start to see in the trends or the graphs, if we do graphs, is that as those new referrals go up, the face-to-face contacts with existing cases will go down a smidge, just because people are shifting their work to different areas for that period of time. And again, I think like Sue said, at this time of year, that's impacted by personal time off. Right now, you can see our foster care contacts are up just a bit. Chad, our foster care coordinator, typically does our subsidized guardianships, our kinship reviews in the summertime or during these couple of months. So he'll be spending some of his time doing that instead of other face-to-face contacts. So generally, we're pretty similar in our numbers, nothing monumental. I don't run the caseload numbers every month, but I did run them before I presented this information to Scott, and they are exactly in that 65 to 70 range with 110 kids. So again, I had relied on that being a number I think would stay consistent, and I think that'll probably be the range that we're in. That's what we can manage. And it will go up, of course, if it has to, because our waiting list continues to be 0. But right now, with juvenile referrals continuing to be down, you know, we'll see. I think schools opening will be we'll have another impact there on juvenile referrals, but for now, we'll just leave that where it is. We're not complaining, I suppose, about juvenile referrals being down. I do worry a bit about what might be happening that we don't know about, that we're going to find out in a couple weeks, but that will happen in a couple weeks. I had shared with you all that we did the we're working on we are working on a grant with Algoma, and we had applied for an extension of that grant. We'll have the answer to that grant application hopefully by the end of this month. We did yesterday just participate in a mid-year review of the existing grant we have, and the state was happy with what we're doing, and they seem to be pretty thrilled with the way we've set up a liaison between the school and the Department of Human Services, and the way that we have decided to creatively spend the money that we haven't been able to spend because of COVID on setting up a mobile resource center that our school social workers, law enforcement, whoever needs it, will be able to go out and reach families who are having a hard time with virtual schooling or will have a difficult time if we switch back to virtual schooling. What else? We have filed the paperwork to remove one more child from out-of-home care. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we will decrease our out-of-home care numbers by one more child, which is always what we're looking to do. We always strive for 0 there. I don't know if that's ever going to be an attainable goal, I'll be honest, but certainly it's something that our folks have worked really hard on decreasing our out-of-home care numbers. That has certainly shown up as Brian and I have gone through our budget information in the last couple of weeks. Certainly those reductions in out-of-home care, that's our biggest expense, have shown up in what our budget looks like, which is halfway decent, I think, for a social worker, but that's maybe a different vantage point than other folks have. So hopefully that will come down one more, and then maybe by the beginning of the year, we'll have at least 2 more young people that will be off of that list that we never really want them to be on. Again, our folks are doing well with their paperwork. Our contacts are at 100% timely. Our IAs are initial assessments 100% timely. Again, I alluded to Brian and I going through budget. That has not been as painful as I suspected it would be. So we will continue with that to hopefully put that together in the way that Scott described. We have a new intern that's joining us today. Brandy, this is her first day. She's sitting in the back with us. We love to have interns because they are, skilled. Brandy comes to us with some skills, but she's also free. So that is a bonus. Right? And I would just second the same things that Sue said about just how our employees are working. I've shared with you our employees have not, our staff in the Children and Families Unit have not really stopped making face-to-faces. There are certain categories of safety where we have to make the face-to-face. So I would just second the same information she shared about. It's tough for staff, I think, right now. You can do this pre-screenings, but sometimes people don't answer the phone, and you still have to go. So then you find those things out, and then it's kind of backtracking and trying to figure out what you do. Our staff are really good about, this is my job and this is my purpose, so this is the risk that I'm willing to take. But I do think it's something for you all to know about, that's what they're doing on a regular basis. So, questions?
Corinne, when you're talking about reducing the number of kids in foster care and working to have another child in a different arrangement, can you talk a little bit about some of the options that you look at when you're doing that? Like, is this one heading toward adoption or?
Right now, the paperwork is filed for this child to be proceeding with adoption, and that is an agreement, I think, between him and his family and his providers, and it's something that I hope that will work out very well for him after a significant period of time in care. So yeah, he will be a young person that we're pursuing adoption on. That can change. I mean, the court process is always something that you can never really predict. For him, I think we have agreement on all parties that this is what's in his best interest, which is always the way we like to pursue that type of permanence. Termination and adoption is never something that is easy to do or something that we pursue. But it is an option that's out there that some kids do need. So hopefully we have the plan for this little guy. We've changed it a few times, so hopefully we will give him some permanence here in the next couple months. The other options, of course, for permanence are coming into care and then reunifying with a family member. There are options for long-term guardianship, subsidized guardianships. As you see lists of out-of-home care, you'll see kids that sometimes move from the foster care list into subsidized guardianship, but that is a form of permanence for them, which means no more social workers, no more court orders, and they have permanence with a caregiver who is usually a relative, but can be somebody that they just have developed a close connection with over the years as well. I'm trying to think of what I've missed. Adoption, guardianship, reunification. We don't do much long-term foster care anymore. Back in the day, we would do long-term foster care to keep placements stable. Now it's pretty much one of those three options. Am I missing anything, Julie? I think Julie would know as well, but yes. Anything else?
Thank you. Okay, next up is Brian Johnson.
Good morning.
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 Go over the financial package that was included with your notes for the meeting. For everything here, starting out with the billing report. We're showing we had our largest month so far, a billing in July. We're up 14.6% from July. Some of the programs are getting more face-to-face activity, more client contacts. Plus, we're also putting a little more emphasis on billable hours, so I think that's starting to show in our billing. Right now, if we keep on the same level, we're averaging $186,000 worth of billing a month. Throughout the year, we'll probably go far better than that throughout the next part of the year. If we keep at this level, we'll be at about $2.2 million in billing for the year, which puts us right at the same level as last year. So I expect a little bit better billing through the next 4 months. December's always kind of a light month with the holidays, but we should probably exceed last year's billing amounts, and of which we probably get in 65 to 70% of what we bill out comes back as in revenues. Any questions on the billing report? Yes.
I just have a question on the billing report for the year-to-date is 1.3 million, and on the state aid report, the amount claimed was 1.5. Should those totals not be equal?
Right. They're different programs. This is what we submit to basically insurance, MA, and those type of programs. The state aid report is what we submit into the state for grant funding that comes back through state and federal programs. So we're talking there's two different parts of our collections, or where we get our revenues from. So these are what when somebody comes in and we bill the insurance or we bill MA for it, this is what we get back on the billing report. On the state aid report, our program costs are submitted into the state or into the federal into the state, which will reimburse us for different programs based on different criteria and different levels of where they do for depending on the programs. Yes, sir.
So does that mean that the total revenue up to date is the sum of those two?
Right.
Okay.
Correct. And now we go to the billing report, or the state aid report, which we have the June numbers in here. We're currently working on July's. They're due at the end of the month. In August, as I think I've stated before, we're always working behind. And we have collected, so for cars, we've collected through May. We did get our BCA, which is kind of our what is the BCA? Basic County Allocation, which is kind of the state's I want to say it like an umbrella payment where here's everything that covers everything in the agency up to a certain degree. So if you have overruns in different programs, it will cover the overruns. It will cover programs that are not covered by other grant programs. So it's kind of a catch-all. And we received a large chunk of that, $301,000 in July for May's payment for what we submitted. So we will have some more coming in, but the bulk of it's in. So now throughout the rest of the year for cars, it will be finishing up where we are with different programs. And so the numbers will start tailing off a little bit as we go throughout the rest of the year for cars.
Do you mean that the revenue coming in will taper off?
Yes.
We
We'll
won't
still
get- we
submit
won't get-
we'll still submit everything we have,
But we won't get reimbursed
but
that?
we've got our big chunk of money now, so we kind of, we'll get, there's still funds for other programs that are still being reimbursed to us, but it won't be in huge, large amounts of money going forward.
I guess maybe, let me ask it a different way for Supervisor Baker. So for CARS reports, we have a limit as to how much we can claim, is that correct? Or can, if we have,
We can
if we had $2 million worth of costs that we claimed, would we get paid $2 million?
No, we'll get claimed what they allow us to. So, you know, we'll send in, you know, $900 million worth of claims. At the end, they'll probably be like 700 and some thousand. We'll get back when we put all these programs together. There's like 20 some different programs that they have different funding levels and different amounts on that we have to admit, put in. But we've received a large chunk of our money so far, and you know, we're at 600,000. So throughout the next 4 or 5 months, we will probably bring in another 200,000, depending on what the program levels are. There's some that aren't, IDP, for instance, is still not decided until what that level will be until December. So
Will the claims that you make stay at the same rate that you have?
for the
done
most
throughout
part,
year?
yes. I mean, whatever we do, we can look at the different programs if we see if there's a way within our power to maybe put more work into a different program that still is underfunded. We work that way, and we'll pull maybe a worker out or have them do some more work in a similar type of a fund or program to make sure we maximize our
Reimbursement.
reimbursement. So
Okay.
there's only a handful of funds that we don't get 100% on, and those are because we don't do the work. It's you know, nothing on our end that we're negligent in doing. So Sparks, on the other hand, we haven't received our BCA, basic accounting. This is the DCF report. They split it up between January through June and June through December. So the first half we have received $106,000, and that's already been taken in. Now we've submitted claims which we have not been reimbursed, and we have about another $291,000 in that program that we expect to come in, if not next month. I expect it next month because normally they, once July comes, the new budget year has come in, so they tend to pay all their outstanding bills at that time. So we usually get a large chunk in August or September. So we should see that money come in fairly soon. And then again, it will kind of taper off. Right now, we received a very small payment in July or in June, and that was because a lot of these programs are starting to max out or hitting their mid-year levels. And we also had like a $3,600 SACWIS payment that they take out of our fund to submit to SACWIS. So for our share of their costs. As far as income maintenance, that's also run through DCF and our consortium. We've pretty much leveled out everything that we can through the state. Now we're looking at the federal dollars, which will pay half of everything that we submit. So every dollar we submit through income maintenance, we will get 50% back for the most part. And that is unlimited as far so far. They haven't changed that. Any other questions on the state aid report?
Brian, do these state aid payments are very consistent from year to year, like cars comes in, big one in May, or is it? Okay, so we
That's
can-
why I know from history, seeing these dollars come in, and actually I'm a little, I think the Sparks dollar should actually have been here in August, but I think with COVID and
Yep.
everything, that maybe they're a little bit behind, but there's been no indication that they've, are running slower. They'll change, and it's pretty much, you can kind of know when the money's going to come in, and what we submit, we kind of know what's going to come in as far as through the programs, because we know where our levels are at and what we've submitted and how much they're going to put in, bring back to us.
So from year to year, Brian, you're pretty confident that your amounts are pretty consistent? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, going back through history and through the experience while I've been here, they've been coming in at the certain times, and I know that in the next September, October, November is kind of a tailing off as far as we've reached all our limits and all our maximums, and we're just working on programs that we still have the capability of putting money towards.
Do they tell you in the beginning of the year what amount you should expect, or you
Yes.
just, okay?
Yes, they do submit a allocation for all programs, so we know how much we have. In most cases, there's a contract that goes along with it that Scott will sign, and it tells us how much we are to submit and what our obligations are. And some of them have special reporting after the year end as far as what we've done with the money or how we've spent it. And so we do know, and for budget purposes right now, we're kind of going off of what our allocations are for this year because they haven't come up with the allocations for next year except for a couple programs.
And we've taken a good look. There is no other way to be, I'm going to use the word creative. We're being creative. We're maxing out what our ability is to get dollars from the state, correct?
We are as creative as, we try to be as creative without being within
Okay.
the limits.
That's fair.
We
All right.
can't put an expense for one program that has nothing to do with it into it. So,
Okay.
and we
Okay.
try to look at what's the best way, what's the best for, best way we'll get our most money back.
All right, thank you.
The next report's the contract status report. We haven't had any major changes on it. We will be looking at probably getting 2001 contracts coming through maybe next meeting. So we might have a slew of contracts. Our contract accountant, Dan, is working on those currently, and to get them out and using DocuSign, we expect all our contracts to be out and signed and back before the end of the year. So that would be a great improvement from what we've done in prior years. Any questions on the contract status reports? The vendor payments for June were submitted. We did $183,000 worth of expenses. Looking through it, I didn't see anything extraordinary in there. Any questions on the report for the vendor payments? And moving on to the financial report, we have the,
I think Linda has a question for you, Brian.
I'm sorry, Linda.
Do county employees still have credit cards?
Yes.
Okay. Do the credit card payments, do they show on this vendor report?
You mean specifically what someone put on their credit card? No, it does not.
Let's see. So, but there are other bills that are probably paid by credit card. Now, I'm not just talking employees, now I'm talking about XYZ company paid by a credit card. None of that shows up on here, right?
I'm trying to-
Correct. It doesn't show up on here. We don't do a lot of, you know, we have our expense reports for the
That used to
the
be a
managers
separate
have-
report.
And that would have to come from finance.
There might, I'll say it this way, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is for the most part, while there are some purchases that are made through credit card by employees, because they're done through credit card, what happens then is a credit card report or monthly log has to be submitted to the finance department. And so in that respect, no, the committee would not, we would not have a specific report for the committee to be looking at as to what specific credit card purchases were done. This is specifically done for checks that were cut or if they're
Correct.
ACH or ATF. But no, we do not have a specific report as to if one of the staff were to use their credit card to register for a conference. Instead, that, like I said, would go up to finance, the finance department. And if there are questions regarding that, then those questions are communicated to the department head and to the unit manager as well as the employee as to what that purchase was. Well, I want to make sure that Linda's still taking care of Supervisor Baker.
Can that report be, can something be generated so we could see those charges?
I can try to take a look at and talk to Mr. Kunish to see if that's possible.
Because I know in the past, there used to be a report of the checks printed, and then there would be also a report for credit card charges.
I can take a look.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Baker.
Wouldn't there be a check in the vendor payments for the credit cards, the credit card charges in total?
There might be, I'd have to
Not
take
on
a
ours, no, it's paid through finance, so,
So it'd be through the finance committee then?
and right now it's mainly, you know, the managers have the credit cards, and if they do any expenses or that, it would go through the credit card payment, which would be run through finance. And finance does pay some invoices with a credit card to get rebates or discounts back to the county. They're starting to do that a little bit more, I think, but overall, what we have here is what we run through our payable system, and I'm sure we could probably get something
I can take a look, yeah.
finance.
Any other questions from Brian on this?
Yes, I have one more. I gotta find it. There was one in here. Oh, I suppose I won't be able to find it. Master's Driving School, and the description was recreation for $750.
It's not recreation. What that basically was for a client to be able to take their driving test.
And that is covered under a program, so it's can't remember if that was CST or if that was, which one it fell under. What? TLTS, okay, yeah, no, and it's something that will be submitted and reimbursed to us, so. Anything else? Okay, I have the financial packet statements for the month of June. Now, they include the accrued revenues and expenses that I know have happened after June that we can, or for June, that would be paid or received in. So hopefully it's up to date as best we can. Through June, we're halfway through the year, so we're at 50%. So on the far right-hand side, we're kind of looking to see that we're at 50% of our revenues, 50% of our expenses. In general, if we go through the different units, economic support is at 53 and 49, so they're in line. One thing we do have here is, I get, it's probably me. It's probably this thing. Have them. Okay. One thing we are kind of, you'll notice lower numbers in child care admin because a lot of the child care has been kind of pushed off or changed with COVID going on. So we've had less apps and less work being done in there, but we've also been able to do more in fraud investigation. So we've done a little bit more in, so our child care fraud and our IM fraud are both a little higher this year. We're able to get caught up on that with COVID. So that's one good thing of that being a little bit slower over the COVID periods. We're not slow right now, though, in that area. Coming down to children and families, we did receive a $3,000 TSSF amount, which is in the Child Protective Services. We didn't have that budgeted because that's a new program that came on board late last year before the budgeting process. And we plan to get another $6,000 in funding from that by the end of the year. And if you look at their numbers, they're running at 68% and 43% as far as they're exceeding their revenues and they're below in their expenses for now. So that department is doing well. Mental health or behavior health. Everything seems to be fairly well in line, falling in at our percentages. One thing we did have in AODA in prevention, we have a prevention task force, which has a separate fund. They did spend some money to put up 3 billboards throughout the county for prevention. You'll probably see one out on 29 as you come through town, but I'm not positive where they're all at, but there's some of the money comes in. So that program works by asking for grant money. We collect the grant money, and then we have to do something, do whatever we submitted our grant funds for. So that's why you'll see a uptick in expenditures there. Otherwise, the other part of IDP or AODA is in line. Again, running a little bit lower in our expected revenues for CCS, or CSP, and CCS is in line. We're still, I think, not positive, but I think we're still waiting for money to come in from at least June, I think. So so those programs are still doing well. CLTS, we still have, if we look into children and family, CLTS is running a little lower in revenues. That's probably because of just the billing being caught up on that or getting the money to come through on there. Plus, we also do, we're starting to book our portion of what we would get for the third-party adjustment at the end of the year. That's being done throughout the year now. And CST, community service team, kind of runs a little bit more into second half of the year, so their expenses and revenues are a little lower. With COVID, we don't know how that program's going to be affected because it does have a lot of conferences and picnics and whatnot with families and children and or families to be put together, and those are kind of run into September, October. I'm not I don't think those are going to be happening this year with COVID going on. And as far as going through the rest of the unit, everything else is fairly much in line. Again, for transportation, we get our money all up front in February, so it kind of trickles out throughout the year as far as the expenses to catch up. So we're usually higher in revenues and throughout the year, and it should even out where we need to be by the end of the year. And we did, you'll notice from the reports, we're getting busier in transportation in July, so we'll see a larger expenses starting to hit in July with the added rides that are needed at that point. And total, our year-to-date bottom line is 504,000 positive. Obviously, be nice to be there at the end of the year. But our revenues are at 48%. Our expenditures are at 49%. So throughout the halfway through the year, we're hanging tight to where our budget is.
And if I may, so if you're wanting to kind of look at where things are, you may look at specific programs and see where we may be low on revenues and higher in expenditures above kind of that 50% benchmark. I think what's best for the committee to take a look at is when we look at each of the units, kind of look at the total for each of the units. You know, if you go with economic support, they're at 53% revenue, 49% expenditure. If you go with children and families, they're at 68% revenue, 43% expenditure. Mental health is at 48% revenue, 54% expenditure, but for behavioral health, they're at 43, 54. Again, so overall, we're looking pretty good so far. And again, I want to remind everyone that from the revenue standpoint, we're doing it from a projection standpoint because of the billing and the reimbursement. There's always that 2 to 3 month lag, which therefore in previous reports would not necessarily give you a good picture as to where we may be. And so with this new report, again, I am in no way going to claim that it's perfect and it's 100% accurate, but I do believe it gives us a better view as to where things go, because if we did it the old way, every month you would look at this, it would look like we're in the hole and that will never get out. So overall, for right now, as Brian had said, we're hanging tight. We're continuing to look at our revenues. We're continuing to look at our expenditures. And the staff is doing an excellent job in doing those things. I really want to commend the unit managers. They're doing an excellent job at looking at that. Any other questions on the finance report for Brian? Okay.
Thank you.
Next item is in-service community support program.
If you'd like, Madam Chair, what you could do is you could ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, Tim and Doak, all in favor of closing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing is closed.
So that's one less set of minutes that Lynn will have to continue to pay attention to. So, so for the community service program, we'll be bringing forth, and if I do a lousy job of introducing her, Sue, please do it otherwise. We have Laura Borkovitz, who's our community service program manager. She has been a longtime employee. The CSP program, what do I want to call them? They're our goalie. She deals with high needs clients that if she didn't do the work that she did, more than likely a number of these folks would be going into crisis. And if they go into crisis, that's a lot of money. So Laura provides a very important service and has been doing an excellent job for many, many years. She was here well before I ever came. So I'll shut up and let you speak. Sure. What did I say? I'm sorry. Yes, community support program. My bad.
There's a lot of
Yeah, I was actually going to clarify that, but.
Thank you.
Good morning. So yeah, the CSP program, Community Support Program, it is a Medicaid program, although it's a small program for Kewaunee County. We do have, there's 11 consumers in Kewaunee County that are on the program. We do have, because of the longevity of some of the folks that have been in this program, there are some people that don't have Medicaid that have been on this program. And although we're not going to kick those people off the program, just because if we did that, of course, they're going to end up in crisis. So it is a certified program through the state. There's a lot of mandates that we have to follow. We have audits every year that we have to abide by. The population that we serve are those that are chronically mentally ill. So it's the folks that the diagnoses may range from those that have schizophrenia, bipolar, families that may be supportive, not supportive. The statute reads that you have a central point of contact, which would be myself. And we rely on services such as eShore Industries. These are the individuals that they would not maintain a job in the community without a service such as eShore. It's not, in fact, I just mentioned this comment to Scott either this week or last week. He was in one of our meetings, and I had mentioned that it's not uncommon for some of these folks. I can turn on my phone in the morning and I may have 20 text messages from just one client alone. Many of our consumers, they call, email, text many times throughout the day. If you don't respond to those contacts, these are the folks that are going to end up in crisis. And if we don't respond to that, those hospitalizations are going to cost us up to $1,000+ a day. So it is critical. It's critical that we maintain these folks in the community. That is the goal. We want them in the community with supports and out of the hospital. So that's pretty much just a basic overrun of the program.
I'll just add, like with eShore Industries, I think of what a job does for someone. It provides you purpose in your life. And this gives them purpose in meaning, whether they're there for a day services program or there to go to work. This gives them structure and routine in their life that without that, they would likely be stuck at home ruminating about all their mental health issues that are going on, which wouldn't be healthy for anyone. So just thinking of ourselves having that purpose and meaning in our life, that service helps to provide that for these individuals. And as Laura said, they would not be able to work in the community at a regular job without, just due to the significance of their mental health. But with the support, they're able to be productive during their day and have some structure and routine as well.
Yeah, structure is very critical. So even if they ask, hey, do you mind if I call you tomorrow? Absolutely. Just, they want that. They just want to be able to check in, and they want that extra little feedback. They want that little check-in to say, hey, you know what? I'm doing okay today, or whatever it may be. And that's fine. If that little phone call, if that extra whatever it may be keeps them out of the hospital, so be it. They know I'm not available 24/7. They know that we have a crisis number that they can call after hours. If that's what it takes for them to, after hours, even call our crisis number, that's fine. That is fine. If that saves the county the money so that they're not in the hospital, so be it. I'm fine with that. I'm sure Scott's fine with that. So whatever it takes.
So Laura, historically, about how many clients do you usually have a year?
Like I said, our caseload is small. So we only have 11 consumers on our program.
And is that usually the case? Does it usually kind of fluctuate? Because from what I've seen, it's usually anywhere between 10 to 15 is what it usually is, correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And these consumers, so they have contact, I'd probably say on average daily. So they're calling, and it's not just once a day, it's probably several times per day they're contacting myself.
But just to think about mental health in general, that oftentimes these individuals have very limited natural support systems, meaning they've burned a lot of bridges, or people just, they isolate themselves, they don't have, so for many people, like for Laura, that's who they have. You know, if something comes up, we might have a family member we could call, or a friend we could call, where that is often limited or non-existent. And so we happen to be the ones that are there in the event they need that, no different than you or I might need to talk to someone as well. And for some people, that might be calling crisis in the middle of the night because they can't sleep and they're worried about something. Where, as you know, that 15-minute phone call can save a lot of distress and trouble for someone as well.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind too, I mean, these are folks too that they're on a lot of different medications, so their hours too aren't, you know, a regular hour, you know, their sleeping hours aren't like ours, in general, I would say. They're across the board. In order to function, they're on a plethora of medications. So, it's a lot just to keep them on the straight and narrow. So,
And I see, Scott, to answer your question about the caseload, the only discharges we have had from that program have been individuals who have passed away. So otherwise, the numbers remain pretty stable.
Which is why I wanted to say that, so for the committee, that they understand that this is usually our lifetime clients.
Unlike the CCS program is the goal that they'll be able to get to functioning as independent as they can, where they won't need the service for the rest of their life. These individuals will likely need the service, the support the rest of their life, just due to the significance of their mental health.
and generally, these folks have gotten onto this program because of a court order. They've done something because of their mental illness that have landed them within, it could be the criminal justice system or what have you, that have landed them where they need that additional support.
Questions at all for Laura? Again, Laura, I'm sorry.
So what's the youngest age and what's the oldest age of your clients?
Mine range from the 30s to 60s. I serve adults.
It's only an adult program.
Again, Laura's doing fantastic work, and again, it takes a special person to have to be taking multiple phone calls and texts and the like every day, and Laura's just one of those employees, like many of our employees in human services, that are having to have multiple calls, multiple contacts, and helping to serve our clients in the county.
So for a population that would have high risk of inpatient hospitalization, I would say that that's a fairly rare occurrence because of the supports that they're getting. Where without it, it would be probably astronomical, the amount of inpatient stays that would be there. But they're getting the support they need, and that number of individuals that end up in the psychiatric hospital, not to say that it never happens, because it does, but is quite small in comparison.
I would argue too, so there's not a planful process usually if you're getting support. The hospitalizations would be random, you're not having to plan for that, and you would create, I think, additional budgetary issues as well as trauma to the folks that work there.
Yeah, I have not had to hospitalize anyone on my caseload, or there has not been any emergency detentions. I don't remember the last time I've had to hospitalize anyone. That's not to say that there hasn't been volunteer admissions, but the county doesn't pay for that.
Other questions for Laura? Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we're moving on to Human Service Director update.
I just had one item. I was at my desk, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and had seen an email from the Wisconsin Legislative Council regarding a recent court case. And when I saw it and kind of read the brief, I had sent an email to our corporation counsel as well as our uh, behavioral health manager. As you were, as the committee is aware, it was last year or sometime the year before that the Office of Inspector General at the Department of Health Services had requested for a repayment of some funds that had been paid to the county, and they had cited that we were not providing the exact documentation properly. And so what I asked Corporation Counsel Jeff Wisnicki is to just kind of come and give a summary as to what he sees as this case, Kathleen Papa versus DHS, and what type of ramifications that may have for our department, either now or in the future. Thanks, Jeff.
Good morning. So I mentioned this a little bit at, I think, our last one of these county boards. I think I talked about this briefly. As Scott indicated, we did receive an audit several years back alleging our CCS program, or at least an audit came in and to review our CCS program, and as a result of that audit, I think they requested 156,000 and change. So what we did is we went down to the state on our knees begging for mercy. You know, what can we do to work this out? That's a lot of money for a small county. And in fact, we reached an agreement where they would reduce it by, I think, 25% or so, provided that they come back in a year or so, do another audit, and if we improved upon our processes, that they would reduce that amount by 25%. At that time, when the original audit came through, there was different people working here, and we're not going to disparage people from the past, but let's just say certain things weren't getting done the way they should have been done, and frankly, some of the problems identified in the audit were meritorious. There were some shortcomings, but you know, we have Sue on board now. The situation is under control, and in fact, I think other people around the state look to Sue and what we're doing here. How are you doing it? How are you getting this program fixed up in terms of record keeping and so on? And then apparently the second audit came in, and our friends over at the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, did their audit again, and they apparently nitpicked the living bejesus out of that program and found some problem. And they were saying, oh, you don't get to get the benefit of our bargain from before, and oh, by the way, you owe us more money because, you know, these additional claims that we audited have some problems. So, you know, the reputation of OIG in that program, and the program's meritorious. What this program is for the state is they go around and they're trying to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare claims and so forth. So it's a good program. You know, we need to have a group like that going around auditing, make sure people are submitting meritorious claims and no one's defrauding the government. That's a good thing. What they are doing, though, they are just being so rigid, nitpicky, and bureaucratic that if there's anything wrong in anything in the paperwork, they're saying, you got to pay us this money back, even though services were provided to people who qualified for those services. So that leads us to this case. So finally, this nurses group down in Waukesha had enough of this. They were providing services. They were submitting bills for $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, and OIG's coming and saying, nope, pay us that money back, all of it back, because you didn't do some paperwork right. So
Can I give an example of just the nitpicky? On one of the things, someone didn't write in there, when you have a team meeting, you have to write the name, address, phone number. Someone didn't put a phone number down, and that every claim had to be received because there was missing a phone number. So when we talk about nitpicky, it's nitpicky. Every treatment plan was there, every piece of paper that is required to be there was done on time and submitted on the state did a work-wide work group on it that came up with forms. We've been using those forms, everything. So it was down to really minuscule things. So just to give you an idea what nitpicky is.
Right. And I applaud them for finding people who can actually know a program that well that they could audit down to those details. But in any event, so this group down in Waukesha sued them finally, said enough of this nonsense, this is getting out of hand. So they sued them, and it made its way all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed, said you cannot not pay people for what they describe as a perfection policy. There's nowhere in the statutes or rule, you have no authority not to pay people based upon this perfection policy or procedure you guys are employing. So that leads us to sort of our dilemma. We did strike a deal with them in the past about this 170,000. I don't think they've taken that money, Brian. Have they taken it?
We have reserved for 75%.
What's that?
We did reserve for 117,000 that's already been expended.
Okay, but they didn't actually take it, or?
We have not paid it.
Okay. So a couple problems. So we agreed to that. We did agree to that. Certainly we could argue now that, you know, based on this case, maybe you can't have that money. But I would say that what happened in the past on that audit, there was some real shortcomings in that documentation. So we might be in trouble there anyway. But, you know, we fixed that problem, so we might be still on the hook for this 117,000, whatever it is. This second audit where they came in to make sure we had our act together, I would certainly think that we're covered under this case, saying, you know, you came back, we did all this stuff, they qualified for the service, we provided the service, we gave you the documentation. So I'm hoping that maybe we're off the hook for all this, but I think that's a little bit of wishful thinking, and we'll see what happens. But I certainly would argue, and I think we'll go to the mat, if they try to recruit more than the 117,000. Certainly we'll try to fight them on that point, but at that point, the documentation was pretty god-awful. So that's it in a nutshell. Again, this group was created for this OIG Inspector General, and it's still in existence. They're going on investigating all these claims to make sure our money's getting spent wisely. I don't know what the onus was to, or what the inspiration was to be so rigid and so, I suspect there might be some, you know, they want to highlight the work they're doing, collecting waste, fraud, and abuse for the state, and perhaps that led to them being overzealous. That's my sense of the matter. But anyway, go ahead.
Of that 117,000 that you think we might owe, you keep saying the paperwork was pretty poorly done, but were the services fraudulent?
No, the services were provided.
So in the core, we shouldn't really have to pay that. It's a question of paperwork not being filled out, but in fact, those were services that were supposed to be reimbursed by the state anyway, right?
I would submit that each of the persons that had the service provided probably qualified for the service, and we did provide them a service, so there's 2 points. The third point, I mean, you have to be able to demonstrate that you did provide the service through some documentation.
Yes, statute dictates what the documentation, like recovery times assessment, there's functional screen, there's things that statute dictates. Those were things that were grotesquely in error before, that they just weren't done. And, you know, there's timelines of when you have to have things done. Those things weren't done. So that would be hard for me to fight. The second round, it was all done.
Okay.
It was all done.
So yeah, there's an argument to be made that we provided services, they did qualify for the services, and I'm sure there's some documentation in there. I just think that it was after we, you know, turned over that stone, we found a lot of ugly bugs, and we had to clean that all up. So, but there's an argument to be made, but we did strike a deal with them, and I guess we'll see where it goes.
The purpose of having Mr. Wisnicki come was just to kind of educate the committee as to kind of where the status is of this, as well as, I guess, to make people aware, because it's a black mark on the county when the Office of Inspector General comes in and basically says that people aren't doing their work. And I think that Sue and myself and Jeff and some are willing to admit that there were some mistakes that were made in the past. But to have to adhere to a perfection standard and therefore have the impact be tens of thousands of dollars because a phone number wasn't put in or some very minor detail that has nothing to do with any type of fraud or miscommunication or otherwise. Uh, I have to agree, and I'm thankful for the Supreme Court saying that the perfection standard is not a realistic standard. And so, again, wanting to make the committee aware of these different things that are going on. So I wasn't needing any specific action, just again wanted to educate the committee as to where we are with the situation, not only regarding OIG, but any type of future items that if they were to do another audit and try to apply the perfection standard, then we would fight vigorously against that.
I would like to say though, on behalf of my staff, they've worked extremely hard
Yes.
to correct the problem. I mean, they spent countless hours redoing things that were done incorrectly with the intent to try to fix it. So it was a lot of additional work for them that they, no questions asked, just did it and did it well.
Correct, and if I didn't say that, I meant to say that because yes, we knew there were some errors in the past. Sue came in, basically indicated to staff that we must make these changes. They did. We're all human. Forgetting to put down a telephone number should not cost you then thousands of dollars. If there's any other questions at all from the committee, Joanne.
So what year is that $117,000 going back to? And how long will this slide before you know for sure if we'll have to pay that?
Was that 18 or was that last year?
Well, they came, let me just think here. They came July 9th, 2016. March, that's when they came, but they took a year to kind of make their decision. And then that's when we met last year when they came back. So it would have been.
Probably was claims for 15, 16.
So, yeah. And then, that was back in 15.
You know, on one hand, do we reach out to them and ask them? Or on the other hand, do we stay quiet? I don't have a good answer for you on that. I think we've planned, and Brian's indicated we have the 117,000 tucked away. So that's already in the books?
That, the 117 from 2018, on the balance sheet.
So the 117,000 would have been 75% of the total, is that correct? The assumption then was we would have gotten the 25% off.
So if in fact we don't have to pay that, then how do you adjust that on the books?
Oh, we don't, then we take it back in the revenue. Right now, we put the expense on the balance sheet, so when we do pay it, it's not gonna affect our bottom line for, other than if it's above the 170.
Other questions at all? As for any other comments or updates, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Wisnicki. As for any other comments or updates, I don't really have any. We will, I guess from a human services standpoint, I apologize. Yes, actually, we will be putting an offer in for an economic support specialist. We did conduct the interviews. The recommendation has been made and making the selection, and I will be contacting them tomorrow to offer them the job. And then from there, we will see when they would be available to start.
Okay, I've got one question in regard to Bob Matice's, wondering what's happening with the director. What is the status on filling that position?
Absolutely. As I have said before, and like I said, I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Matice. He has spent decades of his life serving Kewaunee County and our children and families here, at least for right now. again, until I believe that from an administrative standpoint, that the department is running smoothly and properly. Once I am comfortable with that, then I will gladly step aside and bring in a human services director to take over.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions you want to ask Scott? Otherwise, we will move on to scheduling the next meeting date. Yes?
Couldn't we start that process already for a human services director so that the person could be on board by the 1st of January?
I'm not sure that I would be ready by the 1st of January.
Are there any other items that are prescribed by law that we want to talk about? Otherwise, we'll schedule the next meeting. Okay.
September 17th, right?
And does the 8 o'clock time frame work for people? Okay, I prefer the 8 o'clock. Okay, so the next meeting will be September 17th at 8 a.m. Okay, is there anything else to come before the committee? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Okay, Doak and Joanne as the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Glare right there.
Now I gotta go up and take care of Selena's kids. I've gotta go up and take care of Selena's kids. I'm supposed to be there at 8:30.
I gotta call you these days to find out if
I think
where the
what